In May of 2017, one of the kits that I had on JTV's Jewel School, I think we marketed them, I think they were Shambhala, or what we were calling them, Shambhala or ladder stitch, I'm not sure. But anyway, this is one of those kits. And basically it had leather, some 6mm fire polish, and a new finish. These are Japanese Rococo beads, or size 5s, and some size 3 fire polish in it. And they also had a spool of Tex 210 Eslon. And so what I had done was I made a sample bracelets for the show. It was a single wrap leather using the fire polish. And now when I finish that bracelet, I only have 5 of these fire polish left. So what I want to do today is show you what you can do with the rest of a kit once you've used the feature bead, if you will. So I came home and I found that I had this particular check button in stock. And normally this wouldn't be an issue to use, but this particular button had a really, really small hole on the back of it. So I had to sort of reinvent a way to attach it. So I'm going to walk you through that and then walk you through a couple of different ways, or just a different way of making these wrap bracelets. Okay, so this is the button that kind of started it all. And what I'm using are 54 inches of leather, and I think it's 4 yards of the Tex 210 Eslon. So what happened on this one was, normally if the shank of the button is large enough for me to pass the leather through, it's no problem. You pass the leather through, you tie a knot, and you're ready to go. When you're starting one of these with a button rather than ending it with a button. This one, that wasn't a possibility for me. So what I did was I passed the Eslon through the hole, tied a square knot, and then tied another square knot over the leather. This leather will slip right now. If I were to pull it, it would slip on and off center. But at least now I'm good to go. And on this particular bracelet, this button is going to be my focal piece. So this is one of those where the closure will sit on the top of the wrist instead of on the bottom of the wrist. So I'm going to start this by just tying a knot with the Eslon over the 2 pieces of the leather. And this really isn't anchored to anything. I just kind of have it laying here on the board while I'm trying to get this figured out. And I'm going to put the other half of the square knot in there. All right. Now let's see what we've got here. Let's tuck that down. All right. I'm actually going to put, I think, 2 of the seed beads in here just so that I can get past the button. I want something small to sit under the button. So let's see how that works. Now this is a Rococo seed bead, and if you watched the show or you've seen me sell these the Rococos in the past, they tend to have a small hole, but they've got a center that will pop out so that you can actually make them bigger. And I think they're a size 5. There, the center just popped out, if you can see that. Once that center's out, it's large enough now that I can pass 1 cord in from the left and 1 cord in from the right. And pull that up, and then bring the right under and the left under, and bring the bead in from the left and the other cord in from the right. Now, I didn't pop the center on this one, so I'm not sure if it'll work. No, I think I'm going to have to take that center out. I use tweezers for that. Just give it a little pop. and it makes that hole big enough that you can pass it through from both sides. All right, so I missed that side. I'll take that off. This one has to be under here. Now we'll do that again. This one is under. All right. Left in the left. Right goes through from the right. Let's pull the two ends. Put this up together. And I'm going to do one more. Now I happen to be using the Mini Mac just because it's easier for me to keep that in the camera. If I were doing this on my own without trying to film it, I would use the full-size macrame board. Again, popping that center out. Coming in from the left. And then the other side will come in from the right. And then I'm just going to snug that up and snug that up. All right. And one more, and that'll be long enough for me to pin it down. Again, make sure you pop the center out of the bead. Come in from the left. Bring the right one in from the right. Pull them together. There we go. Now I've got enough that I can actually get in there and pin it to the board. Now I use silk pins. They're sharp. Now this is going to be a 3-wrap bracelet, and because I want to work some of these in and I want to work some of the fire polish in, it's not going to be the same bead all the time the whole way, but I do want part of the wrap to be this. So I'm going to put I think maybe another 2 or 3 in here, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do next. Okay, so I've put a couple of more on, and I went ahead and flipped it over so that it's right side up now. Now, the hole in the 3mm fire polish is not large enough for 2 pieces of the S-Lon to pass through, so I can't put it in the center with the cords coming from the opposite ends to keep it in place. But I want to work this guy into the overall idea, or the overall piece. So how am I going to do that? What I'm going to do is take one of these Rococo beads, and instead of putting the cord going in from different directions, I may not have popped that center, I'm going to put the cords going in from the same direction. Of course I am. know if that got it yet. I'll grab another bead here that doesn't want to be quite as recalcitrant. There we go. I felt that one come out. There it is. See that you want to get that little centerpiece out of them. All right. So both ends of the 2 cords coming in from the same direction. And what that does, lays the bead in the opposite direction on, in the ladder. This one, your hole is running across. Now your hole is running up and down. And now what I'm going to do, before I take the weavers around the outside, I'm going to put a 3mm fire polish on each one of them. If I can find the hole. So there's one. And then I need to put one on this one. All right. So let's slide that guy back up. Now that I've got those 2 on, I'm going to bring the cords around and under, keeping the fire polish on the top. Keep that fire polish on the top. Snug it up a little bit. And now I'm going to put another Rococo with the 2 cords going in from the same direction so that the bead sits vertically. And snug that up. And then I'm just going to keep repeating that pattern. Again, before these 2 cords wrap around and go under the leather, drop a fire polish on each one of them, and then keeping the fire polish on the top, bring them around and under. I'll show you one more time. Okay, keep that fire polish on the top. Bring them around and under. Up. Up. Bring the 2 ends together and put one of the Rococo beads on. And you'll just keep doing that. Probably, let me see, I want a 7 hours. I'm going to do that for about 10 inches, I think. And then, see, now that little guy wanted to go on the bottom. Push him around, make sure he stays on the top. There you go. Now what I want to do is in the middle of the 2nd or 3rd wrap, I want to introduce this bead. So I'm going to do some ciphering, figure out how much of this I want to do, and then I'll come back when I'm ready to put this bead in and show you what I'm going to do with this. Okay, so it took me a little while to figure out what I wanted here, but finally got it. So originally I had put 5 sets of this in, and it wasn't working for me, so I had to take it out, and I put 3 sets with the beads running with the holes parallel to the leather, then 5 with the holes running perpendicular to the leather. So in this group, the bead at the top and the bead at the bottom both have their holes running parallel, vertical if you will. Then 5 with the holes running horizontal. And then I repeated that until I had 7 inches of bracelet. Now what I want to do is 7 inches with, I have a 6.5 inch, so wrist, so I'm using 7 inches. If you have an 8-inch wrist, you might want to use 8 or 8.5 inches. What I want to do now is do an area that doesn't have any beads on it at all. So what I'm going to do are tie square knots over the leather cord. And for those of you who don't know how to do that, let me pull this up a little bit. So just slide this up. And pin it back. All right. When you're tying I'm going to put these together, a square knot over a core cord, what you'll do is, I always start with my right side, pass the right under both of the pieces of leather, the core, and put it over the left hand one. Pick up the left hand and bring it through the loop. It comes over the core and through the loop that was created by that first one, and then just pull that tight. That's 1/2 of a square knot. The other half is going the opposite way. Bring the left cord under the 2 pieces of leather, over the cord on the other side. Pick up the other side cord, bring it over everything and through the loop, and then just pull it tight. And this is why I hate using pins. They always get in the way. All right, there you go. So I'm just going to keep doing that. It's going to be right goes under, and then the left goes under, it goes over the one on the other side. This comes through, and I'll do that one more time. The right one comes under both. It goes over the one on the other side. The other worker, the left-hand worker, comes over everything and through the loop. And then the other way. Left goes under, goes over the right. Right one comes through over everything and through the loop. Okay, now I'm going to do 7 inches of that, and then I'll be back. Okay, I have about 3, maybe 3.5 inches of the square cords, the square knots done, but I'm starting to run out of the tire cord, and so this is a good time to show you what I do. I'm not real fond of working with like 5-yard cords, so I usually only work with 2 or 3 at a time, 2 or 3 yards, and if I have to add, then I have to add as I go on. So what I've done is I've pulled, these are the 2 cords that I've been working with that I need to tie into the square knots as I go along. This cord that I'm sliding up under is another, I think I pulled it 3 yards, so it's 1.5 yards on each side. And what I'm going to do is actually just tie the square knots, over both of the pieces of leather and both of these other pieces of Eslan. Let me just pull these down here a little bit. And grab a pin and just kind of hold those in place for a minute. All right, so I'm going to start with, I'm actually going to do a leftover right simply because it's easier for me to do that with the camera in the position that it's in. And I want to get it right below the last of the square knots that I had tied before. There. Now I'll do a right over left. And that's just to get that started. Now I'm going to start putting it under. So the right is going to go under all of the core and over this left cord. Let me pull it up here so you can get the loop. And then I'm going to grab that left-hand side and pull it over and through that loop. And that's 1/2 of the square. I took those down. And then I'm going to do the same thing. The left side's going to go under everything. It goes over. The right side comes through. Right side comes over, comes through. And I will probably tie, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 knots. And then I'll cut one of these tails, and then I'll tie another 2 or 3 knots, and I'll cut the other one of those tails. And then I'll just keep going until I finish the 7 inches of square knots. Okay, so I finished my 7 inches of square knots, and now I want to go back to doing the ladder stitch, and I want to work these beads in. These are the 6mm fire polish, but I only have 5 of them left in this kit, and I have 7 inches of bracelet that I need to do. So 7 divided by 5 is like 1.4 inches. So what I'm going to do is put one of those bigger beads every 4 inches, or every 1.4 inches. So what I need to do is, I'm coming out of this square knot, and I've put each of the ends under the leather in order to get ready to start doing the ladder stitch again. And I'm going to start the ladder stitch with one of the Rococo beads. Let me just trim that. So I'll put, these are the Rococo seed beads that came with the kit. So let's pull that up and snug that in. And then I'm going to put one of the big beads next. This one has to come under and then go through from the opposite side. And now what I'll do is put more of the Rococos till that would be 1 inch. So about 1 inch, it's 1.5 inches there, to down to about here. I'll fill it up with the Rococos, and then I'll start repeating again with, or actually maybe I'll go down to the 1.5 inches since I started with one here. So I'll do a full inch of the Rococo seed beads, and then put another one of these in, and then finish it out. And when I get to the end of that, I'll show you how I finish it off with the loop for the button. Alright, so now I finished this part of it, and what I have to do now is make a closure here. What I've done when I finished it was just tied a square knot right here. So now what I have to do is make a loop that's large enough for this button to pass through. So there's the center part of that button. The knot needs to go over here. And I tend to leave the S-line in on this. Some people would cut the S-line off here. My preference is to actually make it part of the knot. And you can see I picked up a little leather. Normally I would have 1 inch or 2, maybe 2 or 3 inches less on the end of the leather, but because I did the square knot area, it used less of the length of the leather than if I had put the beads the whole way through it. So let me see what we've got here. Okay, that'll go over. So let me tighten that up. And what I would do is glue this. Probably, that was just an overhand knot, by the way, that I tied there. I would go ahead and glue this, probably trim this maybe about here. Give myself a little bit. Let me see if I can get the light. There you go. And then sometimes what I'll do with this is make a little beaded tassel that comes off the end. You know, put maybe 3 or 4 beads on the end of each one. The other thing I'm going to do with this is I'm going to tie a square knot at the end. Can never have too many knots unless it's too bulky and it shows. But before I trim that, I would go ahead and play around with it and see if I want to put something on the end. But just so you have an idea what this is going to look like, let's put this through here. Okay, and then this would be a triple wrap. So you can see that you end up with something that's, whoops, wait a minute. Let me see if I reach around this tripod here. And maybe if we back out a little bit. There we go. Come. You end up with a bracelet area that is infinitely more interesting than if it was just one pattern all the way around. So just to review what we did, starting, whoops, let me get this button out of here. Starting at the top, we had a small loop on the button, so we started with the S-lon, tied a square knot, then we added the leather and tied another square knot to put the leather in the center, and we started with the ladder stitch. And the ladder stitch, we did 6 beads where the beads were going with the holes perpendicular to the leather. Then I did 1 bead in a series of 3 and 1 where the hole in the seed beads were running parallel to the leather. And these are the fire polish that are sitting on top. We repeated that for 3 times. Then we did 7 inches with nothing but square knots. And then we went back to the ladder stitch using the seed beads and the size 6/0 or the size 6 millimeter of the special finish fire polish that were in the kit. So the only thing that wasn't in the kit was the button. This is a Czech glass button. You can get them online. I have some. I don't have any more of this particular one, but I do carry them. So I hope you'll give it a try and have a good time with it. Thank you.